Autistic Gamer 7, and welcome back to some more Sims for Creative Sim. And obviously this series is part of turning my D&D characters into Sims, or trying my best to, and I'm saying this because this is probably the first character out of all of them that was the hardest one to make. Now you should be seeing the drawing of him soon, and that might explain why he was a little bit harder to make. He is a dragonborn, and if you watched my Create a Sim where I created the Dragon Sims type people for my occult discussions videos, where I was talking about if they brought in dragons in any form of way, and even potentially brought dragons in that we could, you know, actually play like the dragon people and stuff like that. So yeah, I knew early on that this one was going to be a challenge, though I'd had a few more things since then added to my game, like in terms of CC and stuff, that I thought maybe would have helped me create this Dragonborn a little bit better. If you've watched the previous ones, you know the last so many were based off of the evolutions very, very loosely. Well, I still have I have a few characters that, you know, like, I have inspiration for them. Some of them are very generic, like, I have one that's like a butterfly. But yeah, so this one is actually from another Pokemon, just because, like, I started getting the thought in my head in the process of, like, finalizing, like, the ideas for the ones loosely based off the evolutions, and I thought it seemed like a really fun and really cool idea. And this one is based off of Dragapult, which is one of my favorite dragon-type Pokemons at this point. I love Dragapult so much. And Dragapult is a ghost dragon type. So this is actually a Revenant Dragonborn. So this guy has died, and he has refused to fully die. So he is still walking around amongst the living, even though he has died. So with these tattoos that I have going on him right now, what I am trying to do, it's hard to see in the sketch. If you looked closely, you might have been able to see it. But the upper part of his body is actually darker than the lower part of his body. And again, that is sort of a feature to go back to Dragapult, because Dragapult does that same thing. But also with Revenants, technically, you're, like, you know, you sort of choose here and there what distinguishes them as, like, you know, they're dead. Do they have a smell? Do their limbs fall off? Like, stuff like that. One of the main things that I'm doing for him, the tip of his tail is ghost-like. The tip of his tail is almost not there. You can't really fully see it. And then he slowly is starting to turn black from head down. So that's what those tattoos are trying to represent, is that upper half being technically supposed to be darker than the lower half of his body, but obviously in Sims, it's really hard to do. So with these tattoos, that was the only way that I could sort of get them done. I also went with tattoos that slightly had I wouldn't necessarily say tribal feel to it, but that's the word that I can think closely to describe it as of right now. But just because of, like, his village setting and stuff like that, I also thought that that would make sense. He's technically got, like, paint on my drawing, like, paint on his chest, and it's more like, almost like a war paint thing. He's supposed to be a very high, distinguished warrior when he was living for his village. Like, his whole family is mostly warriors. They're very looked on, and, like, you know, his dad is sort of like the head of things, and he would be taking his place. But tragedy strikes. So, leading up to before he died, like, his backstory, so that I can tell you how he got to the way that he is, I am going, obviously, like, if I, again, like, with D&D, you think of, like, for me, I would think of how I would play them, and if they were an NPC. If I would play them, some things would be left up to the DM, but I wanted to go with, like, there was either, like, a group of people that was, like, a bunch of mix of races, maybe it was just one race, like, you know, they're going in undercover mode, like, they're, like, you know, they're almost, like, trying to lay roots, and they take a really long time before they fully finish their con or whatever they're trying to do, which is really bad. So, in my NPC world, for me, it would definitely be like a group of mixed races. It wouldn't be just all one race. It's a group of mixed races that are part of an organization together, and they go around, and certain people just lay their roots somewhere and slowly develop this life, knowing that at some point they're gonna mess it all up. like on purpose, like in a good way for them. So for him, he actually falls in love with this other dragonborn, and like they actually like get together. They end up having a child even. Unbeknownst to him, she was a part of this group, and she was just trying to get into this village so that eventually she could rob the village of all its wealth. And take everything, basically, they had with her organization. So she would basically give her group a call, like, when she thought it was ready to go. Like, she had things snatched. Like, she knew where all the stuff was located. She had keys and everything. Stuff like that. So that was her whole goal. And, you know, cozying up to the head guy's son seemed very logical for her to actually get what she wanted, so that's what she did. And then in the process, she probably necessarily didn't fully think about having a kid, but at the same time, he's a super strong warrior. What's it gonna hurt to have her have a child with him, and hopefully the child also becomes a very super strong warrior, because his family is sort of known for being some of the strongest in their village. So she's like, eh. And eventually, you know, my kid could be like strength for us, so, you know, that'd be cool. But eventually one night, basically, like, an event had happened in the village. She had secretly, like, basically poisoned the village to the point where they would become paralyzed. They wouldn't necessarily be knocked out, but they could become paralyzed. So, I don't know why I have sad stories for some, like, such tragic stories for some of my characters, but I apologize ahead of time. Because some of them do, and this is sort of one of them. In the amongst of it, the stuff that she put in there didn't fully get into his system, but it did enough that he was sort of able to move some, but he couldn't stop it, so he just watched his whole village be robbed, taken advantage of, and other horrible things happened to him, and eventually, like, he was, like, the last survivor, and she was the one who no longer made him the last survivor. So, yeah. I'm trying to not say such bad words, such dramatic words, I guess. But yeah, you get where I'm going with this. He died. She was the cause of it. He was the last one. He watched it all. And then watched her just take his kid. Well, technically, he didn't fully watch that part. He was, you know, that was the last thing he seen was her walking off with the kid. And then he wakes up, who knows how long later. And, you know, technically, he wakes up, but he's still dead. So he's now a Revenant Dragonborn, and now, even though he used to be, like, the strong warrior, he now has to learn how to work with this new body that he has, because obviously being dead, your body is not going to work in the same way as when it was alive. So your muscle strength may mean nothing as much as it did when you were alive. So that's why he would be, like, in my head, you know, like, there's a leveling system in D&D. In my head, he would have been close to level 20, if not level 20, but as soon as he became a Revenant, he's gonna have to relearn everything, so that's how he's back down to 1. And unless I did it as he was an NPC, then I probably would put him up a few levels, depending on, you know, when the party would run into him. So, yeah. But, yeah, the hardest thing with him is because I have to make a dragon dude in Sims, and I was never pleased with my last dragon people, partially because I didn't have a tail. I now have a tail. So there's at least that. I have a tail, and it makes me happy. But I am definitely much happier with the end result with... I've never said his name. I just realized that I haven't said his name. I've referred to him as just him and who, like, was his inspiration. But this is Drax. This is Drax Narrakas. And so that's his name. Should have already said that already, but, you know, brain. Trying to get him to look like a decent character and also at least sort of dragony was sort of hard. Not to mention that this is probably, even to this day, the drawing of this character is one of my most favorite drawings that I've done for mine. I was actually quite proud of this drawing. One, I'm not very good at drawing male characters usually, and I usually don't draw them with quite as much muscle, because that is part of the hard part, is their muscle. Even though, you know, feminine characters can obviously have muscle too, it still looks slightly differently on a female than it does a male. Like a feminine body, masculine body, but, you know, at the same time, I feel like masculine bodies, the muscle starts showing faster anyway. So, I don't know. I just struggle with male characters more than I do female characters, but I think I'm at the point that they're about equal, which makes me happy. I'm happy that now that my guys are not like, I'm not concerned that I'm gonna mess them up in some sort of way. But this was the first, like, super masculine character that I ever drew, so I was, like, really proud of this drawing. I really liked this character, like, the more that I thought about him. Because, like, he's actually a part of another group, and he's sort of, like, the leader. They look at to him as almost the leader of this group, but he actually comes across the two female characters first, and he sort of takes them under his wing, in a way, figure of speech, like, figuratively. Because he sees that they're sort of down on their luck, he feels bad for him, and he has a child, so I think there's part of him that has that parental thing about him. So I really like him because he is very much tough and, like, you know, leader mentality, serious, but he has this soft side to him, even though he has died. But yeah, his whole goal is to eventually find the girl who did this to his village, and also the organization, retrieve his child, and avenge his people. Basically is like his whole goal in life. The sad thing is like, I don't know if he would know, being a revenant, once his goal is complete, that he technically, I think, is supposed to pass away. Officially. So, unless, like, a new goal can restore that life that they keep having, I don't know if that's a thing that can happen. But unless that is a thing and his goal to, like, take care of his child can replace the other need, he will pass away when he finds the child, which is sort of sad when you really think about it. But yeah, anyway. I don't know why I'm laughing at certain points, because it's not funny. I think I just, sometimes my laughs just fill the void of silence, I think is what happens. Anyway. But that being said, I haven't mentioned that he is a barbarian, so he has, like, this rage inside of him and stuff like that. But also, one of the subclasses, which is Path of the Ancestral Guardians, I'm gonna go with it, you know, that it's his village. Like, you actually can summon, like, ancestral spirits or whatever. I forget the full details of it, but basically, like, you know, your ancestors and stuff like that are looking over you. For him, it could be his village, but also since he's slightly inspired by Dragapult, Dragapult shoots little dreepies out, so it makes sense. The relation. I use my family against you. But all in all, I'm actually, though, yeah, he doesn't look like a dragon, and yes, I gave him hair, and that doesn't make sense for a dragon. I partially gave him hair just so that he wasn't, like, completely bald, and I felt like the horns were gonna look slightly out of place, and I sort of didn't like how that looked on my male dragon dude that I tried to make for the Occult Discussions videos. So I decided to change it up a bit and give him hair, and I tried to give him hair that sort of made sense with this whole village feel that I was sort of going with him from the beginning. But also, like, to sort of represent the, what is that thing called? Like, the little spike fin thing that goes down on dragons' heads, and a lot of times goes down their back. For him, I think it does go down his back. And yes, I know if you're a D&D person, Dragonborns are not supposed to have tails, but I think most people don't follow that rule, and I don't either. So I think a Dragonborn without a tail would look weird, because they don't have wings either, so, like, it just looks like lizard folk in a way, or close to them. But anyway, so yeah. Also, without the tail, my sim version of him probably would not look anything remotely like I would want him to, so I'm glad to have the tail. But yeah, so that's sort of what the hair is representing. It also gave me some of that reddish color that I wanted to bring into him, because technically the war paint on his chest is supposed to be a reddish color, but obviously I can't do that, especially since I'm using these tattoos to represent him slowly turning black. This is how he turned out. Like I said, I'm actually really happy with how he turned out. And, like, you know, he actually obviously doesn't fully look like dragon, but I feel like you can get some dragon vibes from him. And I will say there's certain screenshots of him that I absolutely loved how he looked in those screenshots. Like, I was like, this looks like a great screenshot moment. I hope you like how Drax turned out. And I know his backstory is a tragic one, but I hope you, like, at least find it as an interesting story and, like, build up of his character and who he is. So yeah, he does have one of the more tragic ones. There are still a few that do, but I feel like in general, when you look at the world as a whole, there's a lot of people that are going to have some tragedy in their life, some worse than others, but that is part of who makes them who they are. And like this what's happened to him hasn't held him back. He's just pushing forward. Obviously, he refused to die. So, but anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments below which character so far is your favorite. I think this is the 11th character, if I am not mistaken. Because there was Nita, and then the Evolutions, which was 9, and then now him, so that's 1 and 9, and yeah, 11. So we're at 11. So let me know down in the comments below who is your favorite so far. Hope you're looking forward to the rest of them. Also, don't forget to check out the mansion build that is going alongside this series, because eventually I will be putting all these Sims into that household and see what happens. Yeah, so traits and things like that is going to play a big part into that, and I just realized I'm going to have to space out this video a bit more than I thought, because I forgot to mention his traits that will be making him partially who he is in the once he goes into the D&D house. He does have the Master Vampire trait. I gave that to him to represent the fact that he's supposed to be dead, so he's like undead because he's a revenant. And his main, like, I'm giving him gloomy, active, hot-headed, family-oriented, and clumsy if I can get the 5 trait mod to work when this comes out. But I kept with the hot-headed, active, and the family-oriented, because, like, finding his child, and, like, that is a big part of his personality. Active, barbarian, hot-headed, barbarian. So, yeah, that is partially why I chose those as the main 3, if I can't get the mod to work, and then if I can get the mod to work, the other 2 will also be there. Plus, I have set up his likes and dislikes. I am super excited to see them all in this house and see what happens. I hope you are too. But anyway, I'm gonna finally end this video. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then,